Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, December the 12th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, I don't know if you had a chance to see President Trump today before the stock exchange. You know, he rang the bell, which is like the opening bell. The way he was received, he had, quite a welcome, quite a welcome. I assume most of the people who work at the stock exchange are happy that he was elected. So it was quite a morning for him. But to top it off, he was named Time Person of the Year. I guess they don't call it Man of the Year anymore, Person of the Year, whatever. But he was clearly the Man of the Year. There's no question about it. And he's become really an incredibly consequential man in our politics. I mean, if you go back a year ago, would anybody have believed this? I mean, I thought a year ago he might win, but certainly not the victory that he had, winning the popular vote and winning all the swing states and winning like 80% of the counties in the country. So it was a huge victory, a huge victory. And some of the ratings that he's had lately, he's getting good ratings for his transition effort. So I mean, I've got I tell you, he is standing pretty strong right now. He's standing pretty strong right now in this political arena here in the United States. I mean, he's standing very, very strong. And the Democrats, on the other hand, really don't have anybody at the moment. Now, that could change. That will change, of course, as time passes. But for the moment, you got to say, Trump is about as popular as he's ever been and doing as well as anybody could do, really, at the moment. So congratulations to President Trump for being named Man of the Year. I think he was named Man of the Year the last time, I believe. That would have been 17, I guess. Or that would have been 16 going into 17. The last time that he was named Man of the Year. Of course, that was the first time that he won. But that was a totally different victory. I mean, because that was yes, he did win the Electoral College, of course. He was elected, but he didn't win the popular vote. Now, this time he got both. He got 312 electoral votes, and he maintains a lead of 2 or 3 million over Kamala Harris in the popular vote. I know they're still counting votes in California, but I don't think there's enough votes remaining in California to make much of a difference in the national popular numbers. So I think we can safely say that President Trump won the popular vote by 2 million or a little bit over 2 million, which is a pretty good victory. So congratulations to President Trump for ringing the bell, and congratulations for being named time of the year. I've got a post over at the American Thinker today talking about Obamacare and the mess that our healthcare system is right now in the United States. And what I mean by a mess, I'm not talking about the quality of it. The quality is still second to none. The quality is fabulous. The doctors are great. The hospitals are great. The medical treatment, everything about our healthcare system is very good. The only problem is that it's awfully expensive. And I in the post that I have over at the American Thinker, I cite an article that came out indicating that the typical family is paying something like $24,000 a year in premium for a family. That's $2,000 a month. I mean, that's a lot of money. Not the kind of money you associate with paying your healthcare premium. That's more the kind of money you associate with making a mortgage payment these days. So that's a lot of money, and the costs are rising, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction with that part of the healthcare system. Again, I don't think anybody's angry at the quality of the healthcare system. I mean, there's always one person who's going to be unhappy. I know that, and I understand that. And one person who's not going to like a decision that an insurance company made or didn't make. I understand all of that. We just had a shooting of a healthcare executive, and the allegation is that the person who shot him was angry at the company. So, these things are obviously, some people get pretty wild about this. But for the most part, I don't think people are angry at the quality of the service they're getting. I think it's more the cost of the service. And this all kind of goes back to Obamacare. Now, I happen to be one of the veterans of those Obamacare battles back in 2009 and 2010. And I think it's time, this is the point I make in my article, it's time that we take a look at what we created back in 2010, these exchanges and all of that were created back then. And I think it's time we take a look at it and just ask ourselves a very simple question. Is this thing working or how can we amend it? Because it's not, when you have to pay this much for healthcare, and the number one cause right now of consumer bankruptcy is healthcare. You get sick and they put you in a hospital. You cannot pay it, so you got to declare yourself bankrupt. That's not a good system for the person declaring himself bankrupt, and that's not a good system for the hospital either, because somebody has to eat that loss, and it's probably going to be the hospital. So I think we got to take another look at it. I have always felt, and I hope that with the new Trump administration coming in, that sometime in this presidential term, I don't think he's going to do it the first year because he's got other things he's got to do. But maybe in the second half, of the second term, in the third or fourth year, they can take a look at Obamacare and replace it. You can keep some of the things that Obamacare has, like, for example, the pre-existing conditions. Yes, no one should be denied coverage because of pre-existing conditions, but you can do it by creating a special company that handles that, by creating a certain plan. Maybe that's where the government could help a little bit in funding it. So you could put people who have pre-existing conditions, separate them and put them in a separate plan. But what I would like to see is, so you can keep that part of it, we can keep. And yes, I think some people need subsidies when they buy their insurance. We can keep some of those two features of Obamacare, the subsidies of premiums and the pre-existing conditions. But the rest of us, the 80-90% of us who don't qualify for those two exceptions, we should, instead of buying it through Obamacare, what we should do is simply get a tax credit. And then we go out and we buy whatever policy we want to buy. So a 60-year-old woman, for example, can go out and get a policy instead of having to pay for maternity, which is what you have to do in some of these exchanges. If you're 22 years old and you're perfectly healthy and you're single, well, go out and get yourself a high deductible policy if that's what you want, because you don't need anything different. Those are the kinds of choices that the private sector would provide. And the way we get people, the way we take care of people is by tax credit. You give somebody a tax credit, they go out and buy a private sector policy, and you let the distribution of the policies and who gets them, how they get them, you leave that in the hands of the private sector. And I think that's the best way that this will work. But Obamacare has to be amended. It simply is not working right now. And the American people are saying it. I think that I heard yesterday that in most exchanges now, there's only one company that is even offering services, that a lot of companies are just going around it, around Obamacare, which I think tells you everything you need to know. So we have to amend Obamacare. We got to do something to fix it. And I don't have all the solutions, but I do remember back when we were having these debates about Obamacare back in 2009 and 2010, that what many of us were calling for back then was tax credits. Just give people a tax credit, and you go out and you buy whatever policy you want to buy, and get the government out of putting you in one policy or another. So I don't know if this is going to happen next year, but I do know that people are pretty angry at these premiums. And honestly, I cannot blame them. I cannot blame them for that anger, because when you're paying these kinds of money, you're basically blowing up your budget just paying for healthcare. And God forbid you don't get sick. As I mentioned, the leading cause of bankruptcy these days is healthcare costs. I mean, it's simply impossible for most people to get to it. I have a post coming out Friday morning about the city of San Francisco. Another major retailer has decided to get out. Companies are saying we just cannot do business here. And part of the problem is people are stealing, there's shoplifting all over. These stores are very unsafe. There was an incident of an employee in one of these stores who was attacked by a drunk customer or whatever. And you cannot expect people to work in those conditions, and you cannot expect businesses to operate in those conditions. So another company who's been there for 40 years is getting out. They're just getting out. They're saying, this is not for me. We just can no longer do business in a city under these conditions. So hopefully hopefully the leaders of San Francisco will get their act together pretty soon and begin to realize that unless they straighten this out, I don't know who's going to stay there. I don't know who's going to stay there because a lot of people are just packing up and leaving. And what a shame. I mean, what a beautiful city, beautiful weather. I mean, San Francisco, one of the greatest cities in North America, and they've turned it into an absolute, I mean, I cannot even repeat the word on this recording of what it is, but you know what I'm talking about. It's just a very bad place right now, and it didn't have to happen that way, but it happened that way because of bad politicians, bad policy. That's all that it is. Well, if you are a fan of Frank Sinatra, let me give you a quick historical note. The great Frank Sinatra was born on this day in 1915, passed away in 1998. In fact, I remember the day that Frank Sinatra passed away. I was going out to lunch when I heard the news that Frank Sinatra passed away. He had been ill, of course, for quite some time, so it was not a shock. His death was not a shock, but still, everybody was talking about it. And later that day on the radio, the music station was playing nothing but Frank Sinatra. One of the great personalities, one of the great singers, also made a bunch of movies too. I don't know how well regarded he was as an actor, but he made a bunch of movies. But clearly his voice is probably what everybody remembers. Very unique voice, a voice that you hear it and you go, oh, that's Frank Sinatra. You don't have to even think about it. You know it's Frank Sinatra. So he was born in New Jersey on this day in 1915, died in, I think, California in 1998. The late, great Frank Sinatra. What a great American story he is. Thank you for listening, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.